Good morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning into this session of the 43rd Annual BDPA National Conference. On behalf of BDPA, welcome to the Digital Transformation Innovation Fireside Chat, where our featured panelists are Aubrey Anand, Alonda Sharp-Buckley, and Ramesh Deversla. Mrs. Alonda Sharp-Buckley not only delivers, she brings along the next set of leaders for the journey. As a Senior Director of Development Engineering for Dell EMC Technology, she daily impacts customers and employees globally. Alonda is currently on an expatriate assignment in Penang, Malaysia. Her responsibilities include leading an international team that delivers on the customer promise, touching over 13 million client assets annually, contributing to $390 million to Dell's bottom line. In addition, Alonda serves as the organization's executive sponsor for mentoring and development programs. Alonda's passion and purpose to develop, challenge, and engage others shines in her far-reaching community involvement, STEM, mentoring, and advocacy programs. Alonda actively participates in panel discussion topics from career advancement to innovation and leveraging robotics. Each year, Alonda hosts a Barbie brunch that has donated over 800 Barbies to children in need. Earning her bachelor's degree in public relations, Alonda leverages strategic communication to simplify the language of technology. A native of Columbus, Ohio, Alonda pays tribute to the Buckeye State each Saturday in the fall as she cheers on the football team. All right, and Alonda and her husband, Michael, are proud parents of two sons, Zachary and Xavier. Good morning and welcome, Ms. Buckley.
Thank you. Good morning.
Next is Mr. Ramesh Deversla. As the information officer for research, Ramesh Deversla is responsible for the IT and informatics capabilities that accelerate the discovery and preclinical efforts of Lilly Research Labs. Ramesh focused on his career on the intersection of life science and data science. His mission at Lilly is to unite science with technology to accelerate research and development pipelines and deliver innovative therapeutics. Prior to Lilly, Ramesh was the executive director of Discovery IT and Lab Automation at Bristol Myers Squibb. Over his years at Bristol Myers Squibb, Ramesh focused on integrating both physical lab and digital analytics systems into seamless capabilities. Prior to BMS, Ramesh spent several years at Tripos, a computational chemistry software firm. He is an active leader in many industry forums, such as Pistola Alliance and the DOE Escalates Computing Project. He also is a member of Dean's Advisory Council of Indiana University's Luddy School of Informatics, Computing, and Engineering. Ramesh is a member of the board of directors at the 16 Tech Community Corporation, focused on building an innovation district in the heart of Indianapolis. Ramesh earned his BA in chemistry and PhD in biophysics from the University of Virginia. Good morning, Mr. Ramesh.
Morning, thank you. Nice to be here.
All right, and Mr. Aubrey Anand. Aubrey is an experienced healthcare strategy and technology consulting leader with over 15 years of management and technology consulting experience, with a focus on IT strategy, digital transformation, strategic planning, and project management. As a former member of PwC's Digital Strategy and Technology Innovation practice, he spent the last decade working with healthcare and pharma executives to utilize emerging and digital technologies to increase drug discovery rates, increase speed of clinical development, and improve patient engagement. His deep technical background, strong business acumen, and passion for experience designs allows him to break down barriers between business and IT organizations, to design and implement technology solutions that deliver world-class customer experiences and drive business results. Aubrey now leads an Indianapolis-based boutique technology and digital strategy consultancy where he helps small to medium-sized businesses identify, plan, and seize the growth opportunities in today's digital-first world. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Mr. Anand to lead the conversation today.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. So I think to begin our discussion, I think question top of minds for everyone is really start to talk about what digital means. So maybe Linda, I'll start with you. I'll say what does digital mean to you, and then what would you say are the key factors for success?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll answer it from the standpoint of leading an organization, especially this past year. So I lead a group of engineers who primarily do their job in a physical location, in an office, touching systems. So when we think about digital transformation, the need to have to pivot to being able to do our work remotely was massive. So leveraging technology to automate. So the transformational piece for me is really, how do we have the ability to still serve our customers, deliver on excellence, but at the same time, have our team be more efficient. So the digital transformation in my environment is really about pairing execution with technology without dropping a beat. But at the same time, how do we do all this remotely when we require to be in the office that you can't be in? So I definitely think in my world, it's a little bit unique. In general, though, I will say there's another layer to digital transformation, which is really looking at those processes that we've all had for 5 years, 10 years, and asking ourselves, how many times a day can I really hit F12 before I figure out a way to automate it? So that's another big component for me. And just quickly, I think the success is, number one, it's communicating what your goals are, but you got to understand what your goals are. So to drive any kind of change, if you don't know where you're going, it's really hard to take people with you. So I would just say the number one key to success, and I'm sure Ramesh is going to give you tons as well, is, for me, communication and transparency, hands down, are the two that are vital to any kind of change.
Thank you. Now, Ramesh, I know you're in an organization that's leading a lot of change amid what happened last year, accelerating change. How would you say that digital played a role, and then what did your organization define it as, and how are you responding to that?
Yeah, the pandemic created so many challenges for so many organizations. On January 1, 2020, if you had gone to the Lilly website and looked up our therapeutic areas, disease areas, where our areas of expertise are, infectious disease is not found. In fact, even today, if you go to our website, I'm sure we don't have infectious disease listed as an area that we focus on. And so the pivot that we had to make were twofold, really, during the pandemic. One was continue to run the business. So how do we enable people to go remote? How do we enable the collaborations to still happen? Thank God for capabilities like Teams and Zoom and other platforms. That was one part of our pivot that we had to do, which required a lot of digitization, or maybe it was personal digitization, because we were also remote and still had to continue. But the other pivot that required a significant amount of digital transformation was, how do we attack the pandemic? How do we attack this virus? And so Lilly stepped into a space where we talked about standing up a diagnostic testing service, a drive-through service in the state of Indiana, because early in the pandemic, none existed in the state. And so we stepped forward and said, we're going to set up that diagnostic testing service. And the other part was, is there an opportunity for us to leverage our science and technology to find a medicine that could help treat this disease? And that required a significant pivot as well. Specifically, when we think about the diagnostic drive-through testing service, this company went sort of from a pharmaceutical product company to a healthcare service delivery company. Suddenly we're touching patients, suddenly we're dealing with patients' data. We're engaging them directly, so we have to worry about HIPAA much more so than we worried about in sort of our more traditional processes. So in this way, I think that whenever a challenge is presented, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's an economic challenge or a business disruptor, you have to understand what your end goal is and rethink your entire process, rethink your entire platform strategy to make sure you're focused on achieving your business outcomes. For us, it was run the operations, keep the company going, as well attack this pandemic.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think mean, the second point you hit there was really, looking at, your transformation from becoming, a medicines company to a health service delivery company. To me, that is what I look at as what this pandemic kind of pushed everybody to do. Was, I think before pre-pandemic, all these things that we're doing now were nice to haves, right? They were kind of like, 3, 4, 5 years out. When we get the time, right, we'll do some things that are more innovative. But I think what this pandemic has allowed people to do was really start to think about, transforming or really looking at changing the way that you do things in the old way and entirely changing that to do things differently. And to me, that's the key ingredient where transformation is. It's not just about reinventing, right, the old processes that you have or digitizing them, right? It's really about how do we create experiences that kind of deliver world-class impact to our customers or patients or whoever our stakeholders are. And then, right, as you've seen in the pandemic, people are now coming up with new business models, right? They're moving from product companies to service companies or vice versa, right? They used to be a service company, now they're serving a product, right? So to me, I think that is where, if you look at leaders that are doing as well, right, that's where a lot of it is. It's not just about automation and, automating processes and digitizing things. They are really thinking about, hey, how do we change the way that our business model was yesterday to something entirely new, basically building new business revenue models. And I think to me, that's the power that comes with the transformation, right? All the technologies, all the other things are just enablers, right? That's where the key is. So I think, maybe Ramesh, you can touch on a little bit. As you mentioned a little bit, was there, especially coming with the pandemic and having to pivot, there's a lot of organizational changes and challenges. What would you say was some of the learnings that your team or your organization went through? And then what are some I'll say inertia or things that needs to be started to make transformation successful?
Oddly, sometimes the worst thing you can do is listen to your customers. Because, if Uber asked the taxi drivers, how do we make your experience better? If Uber asked the taxi companies, how do we make the taxi experience better? We would have ended up with cameras on the hoods of the vehicles with the heads-up display to tell the taxi driver there's somebody standing with their hand raised at the corner at the intersection, and that's it. And that would have been the business model, and it would have slightly improved taxi service and quality, I suppose, but we wouldn't be as addicted as we all are to the Uber app now. And so in a way, what Uber represented was think outside of the current process, understand what the abstract goal is, and then challenge every assumption that the people that live this day to day feel. And so in that way, every industry, especially pharmaceuticals, especially the R&D space, we have to be more experts at our business areas that we support than the people in the business area that we support. As technologists, typically most of us are in IT organizations that are supporting a business area, and we typically strictly listen to them and deliver what they want. But in this case, in the case of digital transformation, you've got to understand their business better than them. You have to break all of the assumptions, ignore or forget all of the assumptions that are made, and dream that process, redesign that process in a way that is more digitally native, digitally fluid. So there's a lot of challenges that are required. I mean, the willingness to step up and actually challenge our business partners to say, I know this better than you, that's a dangerous conversation to have. And yet that is the most important conversation to have.
Right, yeah. Yolanda, Orlando, what would you say some of your organizational changes or challenges in response to digital transformation have been, or you see?
Yeah, I think the customer is hands down. So when you support customers who range from frontline, So we were enabling hospitals, right? And so you had the need to get hardware out really quickly. And then you pivot, and I have classrooms where now kids need to have, platforms to work, for school, at home. So for us, one of the biggest challenges was, it is that still run the business, but transform the business. Oh, and in the middle, customers need you. And so I think our biggest shift was, how do we keep everything going as planned? When you're serving 120 countries, our challenge is government rules were changing so quickly. And so for us, the ability to keep up with all the rules, all the changes, all the logistical challenges, then you have hardware and technology shortages. So our challenge was really, technology was changing, but people's lives were changing at the same time, and rules are changing. And so that was really big for us is, how do you keep your teams motivated to serve your customer, serve your customer, serve your customer, and let us worry about all of the behind the scenes things that are happening, because it's easy for people to lose focus when there's so much going on around them. So that was definitely hard, is that we're used to rules changing, but not so quickly. And we weren't used to having to now have customers ordering, their cycles change. Most customers, we all know, you plan for your year, your fiscal year. You know exactly how much money you're going to spend at the beginning of each year. Those rules went out the window when now you have hundreds and thousands of team members who don't have laptops to work remote. So now you have to order. So ensuring to our customers, we've got this, even though there may have been a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes in our world, we've got to keep the calm, keep our team members all good. But at the end of the day, we have to deliver results. So that was really challenging for us. But one of the things that we all do is that we all plan for business continuity plans. Like, what if something happens? And a lot of times you never have to pull that what if. And I think what we all saw was everything that we had been planning for, all the risk, all the disaster recovery plans that we had planned for years, they actually work. You don't want to have to leverage them, but it was good to have them. So I would say the one thing I would encourage everyone is, what's your plan B, your plan C, your plan D, because you may have to leverage your emergency plan for situations like this. Hopefully not another COVID situation, but there will be an obstacle that you will have to have your plan B, C, D, and so forth to serve your customers.
Thank you. I believe we have a question from the audience. Jason, do you want to read it?
Yes, sir. We have a question from Ms. Donna Bowman. She said, do you believe that organizations will still move forward with transformative digital strategies that support their organization/teams' ability to work more efficiently away from the office now that we have the vaccines and our team members are returning to work?
Yes.
Anyone wants to take that first?
I can say for us, so like I said, we serve a lot of different countries, so the rules are constantly changing, but the returning to work is going to look different, I know, for our organizations. So around the company, we now have asked employees, what they prefer. So if you're in roles where you can work hybrid, we have about 60-70% of people who are probably going to have some kind of hybrid working model. So that is definitely going to change. But as far as the digital transformation and moving forward, we're going to continue to move forward with that, because we have seen that for us, the benefits is, if we can continue to scale through digital transformation, we can be future ready now. So returning to work is just one aspect, but when you think about what you'll need in the future, it's also being prepared to handle the work that you don't even have today, the demand you don't have today. When you think about what Ramesh is talking about in his, all of his research, he doesn't know what he's going to be faced with in a year or 2 years that him and his team may be faced with. So you have to have these strategies in place to give you capacity and time back to get to the stuff that you can't get to today. So in my environment and in my world, I think absolutely, regardless of if you're going to work in a physical office or at home or wherever, we're going to need those digital strategies to continue to ramp up and evolve.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Olanda. There's probably two aspects, as Olanda articulated. One is, how are you going to do work, returning to work or remote work or whatever, right? So there's digital enablement of a more flexible working environment. That's certainly true. And we have a lot of leaders in Lilly who have said, you can't unsee what we just saw, what we were able to accomplish in the middle of the pandemic. So let's not pretend that that didn't happen and go back to 2019 in the way that we are working in the office. So we are going to change. We're all changing. We're all trying to understand how to be flexible. You know, you have to enable that flexibility and provide all the digital tools or digital enablement that's needed. It changes the way you think about firewalls, changes the way you think about video calls, changes the way you think about conference rooms and all that. So remote work, flexible location working is something that we have to address. I don't know if anyone has got it right, but we will all learn. And you know what? I think we're all going to learn from each other. We all have to teach each other how to do this remote work, right? Because I think it'll float all boats higher with the rising tide of making that model work. But the second aspect of it is just as important, perhaps more urgent actually, which is digital transformation, disruption of our businesses and our business models is going to happen more and more. And frankly, we have to keep investing. We have to keep moving forward, if nothing else, to maintain our competitiveness, because all of our competitors are digitally transforming. So we can sit here and say, we're going to wait, and then we're going to get disrupted and made more irrelevant. So we are not going to slow down. It's only going to get more and more urgent. The hard part is the pandemic also has enabled a lot of people to disrupt other industries. So the competition is heating up. It's not slowing down. So we have to continue to transform.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the phrase you use. We can't unsee what we just saw, right? I think because I think, companies are going to move forward. And even from a consumer standpoint, even in healthcare, right? We see vaccines that were, put out in 2 years, which is unheard of, right? So just thinking of going back to the old model would not be, and then you can relate this to all other industries right now, right? People can basically sit at home and order food and do all sorts of different things, the convenience, the accessibility that it brings. I don't see organizations trying to kind of scale back. I think it's more going to increase the amount of investments. And even when you look at the amount of technology that is really accelerating the investments, when you look at new entrants in industries that don't belong in those industries, right? There's high tech, big tech companies, right? They see opportunities in all other industries, right? Where they have the experience, they have the technology, they have, they've built these things. So like you said, the competition, right? They're looking for other industries to like disrupt. So I think, just looking at those and then, not saying, hey, we did this thing, kind of weathered the storm. Now let's kind of go back to, riding the storm. I think it's not going to, I think most organizations are going to still continue to even stay ahead of the curve. Do we have another question? If we are, we can take another question.
No, sorry, we don't have any right now.
Okay. All right, so I think one other thing that I wanted to touch on, maybe dive a little deeper in the previous question. We talked a little about organization, but maybe Orlando, as you talk about your team, your organization that you're managing, maybe can you talk a little bit about, some of the challenges that you faced? One, about, how you help your organization or your team change its mindset from the way that they're doing things, because that's what digital is about. Just a different way of thinking, a different way of doing things, but also, like you said, keep running the business and then trying to transform the business. So what were some of the challenges, and then how are you kind of responding or, inspiring your team to think differently with this era of digital?
Yeah, we've actually been going through transformational changes pre-COVID. But one of the keys for my organization is we are filled with a lot of what I call expertise, right? A lot of people with years of service. And so we really try to balance, look, we may be changing, how we do things, but it doesn't mean that your experience and expertise is not needed in this. Because, like you said, automation is not going to change the mindset, right? It may help you automate what you do, but we've really tried to ensure that our people understand. I always say people want to know what's in it for them. If you come from any sales environment, they call it the WIFM, what's in it for me? So anytime you're trying to change a culture, you got to answer the question first to your team, what's in it for me, right? What is this change going to do for me? How's it going to impact me? Because at the end of the day, you are going to run into challenges. You're going to have roadblocks. But if people understand there is a place for all of us, this is what this change means for our customers, for our bottom line, for your future, then people are willing to embrace the change. And so for us, you know, the first year we started to do change, I literally, it's not the best way to probably do things, but I asked my team, what do you hate doing every day? What is that one task that if you never, ever, ever had to do it again, you'd be okay? And once we figured out what team members didn't want to do, we actually started with that to transform. So we automated a couple of the things that people just didn't want to do. And what you find when you spend time with your teams, they all have those one or two things they do every day that if you just took that off their plate, they would get excited about change and transforming, because then they get to the cool stuff that they want to do. Engineers want to build, you know, they don't want to hit, like I say, F12 75 times a day. They want to pull things apart. And so for us, the challenge was, how do you take people that have a lot of years of service and get them to the mindset that you want to now change how they've been doing things for 15, 20 years. Oh, and by the way, we've been very profitable during those 15 and 20 years. So we're not changing because we're not making money. We're not changing because our customers aren't happy. We're changing because we understand that in the future, there's going to be things that we need to be prepared to handle, and we can't wait until the future to prepare for them. So for me, it was, how do you address that 20, 25 years of knowledge and experience of people and get them to change when things have been going great for that long? And it started with what's in it for them. That has been the culture of us. What's in it for the WIFM? I say the WIFM. What's in it for me?
Nice. Ramesh, how has your organization been changing from just skill, talent level? How have they been adapting to this digital era?
Yeah, there's two aspects to it. The first aspect is, of course, we have to continue to upskill. We have to continue to refresh our technologies and our personal skills, or even our leadership skills. The world is changing too fast. The technology world is changing too fast. And what we knew or what we learned a decade ago is meaningless. It's worthless today. Unless you have some old COBOL systems lying around, maybe you need a couple of people for that or something. But you know, even my technical skills that I had and I was so proud of years ago are thoroughly worthless in today's technology footprint. And so you have to continuously learn. So it's not about what your degree was, what you learned way back when, or what school you went to anymore. It's about what skills do you have today, and how fast can we throw you in the deep end of the pool and pick up a new technology and become productive in it. So we all, of course, talk about AI and machine learning and all that kind of stuff, but how many of us really understand it? How many of us have actually touched code that manipulates a neural network? Do we understand the math behind neural network capabilities? It's very, very different. And so learning those kinds of capabilities is really the key, constantly relearning. And so within the company, we've got a massive investment that we need to do, that we need to increase on teaching, upskilling, new certifications, et cetera. I don't know why any IT organization wouldn't have 100% of their staff AWS or Azure certified or whatever. 100% of the staff needs to have those kinds of cloud certifications, because the whole world is moving in that direction. So that's one piece of it, is massive upskilling. The second piece of it is, and this is something Alonda also touched on, I try to wrap my head around mission. I think that when you have people who have been in the organization 15, 20 years, they have a lot of expertise, but sometimes those people, when they're left alone for too long because they're the experts, they don't need oversight, their mission might be a little bit off target to the rest of the organization. And when you have new people that join a company, the younger folks may not be as aware or sensitive to the real mission of the company. All they know is their particular job or job description. So I spend a lot of time with my group talking about mission statement. For me, I unite science and technology to accelerate R&D pipelines and deliver therapeutic innovations. That's my personal mission statement. That's also my organizational mission statement. We unite science with technology to accelerate R&D pipelines and deliver therapeutic innovation. And rallying people towards a common mission, towards a noble goal, allows everybody to understand, how do I take my skill set and achieve that specific goal? I'm very jealous of sports teams because their goals are very obvious, right? Score more points and deny the other team as many points. The goals are simple in that way, and you engineer all kinds of ridiculous plays and strategies and whatever to hit your goal. Our goal has to be as clear as an athletic team. That's what we need. And so upskill to meet the common goal. That's how we're going to get people to be more successful.
Yeah.
And Aubrey, can I jump in on that just really quickly?
Go ahead.
I think there's something that sometimes we miss as leaders. You know, a lot of times we talk about what we want our teams to do. Our teams need to upskill. Our teams need to change. Our teams need to evolve. But as leaders, we sometimes lead out we need to do the same things. And I can tell you, for me, I am not an engineer at heart. I have no engineering degree, and I lead engineering. Because 4 years ago, I got pinged and someone said, look, we want you to come and run the engineering organization. And I said, I am not an engineer. And they said, look, I got 1,000 engineers, but I don't have anybody who understands our customers, who understand, you know, that there is a customer in the center of it all. And so as a leader, when you talk about pivoting to something that you have no clue about, you've got to think, can I lead by example and do this? So today, I could talk about Python and Linux and NIC cards and all that and rate settings, but I would not have been able to do that had I not realized that I need to pivot, I need to change, I need to upskill. And so I encourage leaders, roll up your sleeves and don't ask your team to do something that you wouldn't do. And I think it's important for all of us to realize it's not just you tell someone else what to do. You have to lead by example because they're watching you.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. I think tradition's always been, you know, hey, let's our teams need to learn this, do that. I think that, you know, just doing that from a leadership perspective, like they seen you doing it, being invested, kind of helps them push along as well. One of the things that I maybe want to touch on a little more is maybe from both of you, what would you say? I know we have a few, you know, young aspiring technologists, you know, people that are looking to get in the workforce, right? They're trying to understand digital, they're trying to upskill. Would you say, what advice would you give them in terms of skills that will help them either stand out or be competitive, right, in this digital era?
Hey, Ramesh, by the way, you and I aren't young. Just want you to know that, because when he said that, you know, young, we were excluded from that. Aubrey, that was nice. But we're excluded
all
from
young.
that. We love that. So the young technologists, not us.
Yeah, but you know what? You know what, Alonda, though? You and I are both nerds, and we know it.
There you go. That is correct, and that's okay. You know, I can start. I say the number one thing I tell people is keep your curiosity and creativity, because you can learn a skill, right? You can go to a class, you can get a certification, but that curiosity for learning and that just creativity is really going to help you in any organization. And I would say if you're young and you're starting off, you know, give yourself a chance to really be as curious as you can, touch as many things as you can, get as, you know, if you look at the customer journey, I tell people no matter what company you're in, follow the customer journey, whether that's from the outside sales lens, the delivery side of it. If you get a chance to experience the customer journey, your lens, by the time that you become a senior leader in the organization, you can discuss any aspect of the customer. So keep your curiosity high, keep your creativity high, and you cannot do it alone. Build you a community to collaborate with. And so if you have those things, you can always fill in the blanks and learn. But those to me are very critical.
+1 on everything she just said. Absolutely. I think that she's right. I think Alonda nailed it. I am absolutely a fan of those who are curious, those who are continuously learning. And actually, you know, Alonda said, you know, think about the lens that you have. I say a similar thing. I say, widen your aperture, widen the aperture. So be deep in something, be deep in a lot of things, but make sure you see where the world is going, see where the trends are, and make sure you're understanding what the impact is going to be from those disruptors that are coming from outside of your blinders. So be deep, constantly learn new things and try new ways of working as well. I mean, how much have we tried to pivot away from a meeting culture to an email culture to a Teams, Slack, chat culture now, right? And so we're all learning how to work differently. Well, need to learn the different technologies. If you don't know neural networks, go learn it as fast as you can. But by the way, they're probably going to be irrelevant in a couple of years because something new is going to come along. So keep that going. But then don't forget to become an expert in your business area. It's not just about what you know as a technologist. Do you understand the business environment? Do you understand the economic pressures that your industry is facing? Do you understand the supply chain? So constantly learning, not just technology, constantly learning everything. That's what it takes to be successful.
Yeah, all on point. And I think one other thing, looking at it from like the customer lens, the technology lens, that curiosity, of learning. I think one other thing that I will add to that is just from what I see is, I think now a lot of the challenges or opportunities that lie ahead of us, right? They're not just, like you said, business or technology problems. They're also human problems, right? And I think the people that are starting to think about how do we, create solutions that, take into consideration the human experience, right? The customer experience, not just beyond like flashy labels and making it look good, but actually helping solve like some deep emotional problems that humans have. I think that when you start thinking about design thinking, right, that's what hits the core of it, right? How do you deliver experiences that really solve? So I think if you're able to look at the deep technical skills, right, which Ramesh talked about, the AWS, AI, all of that, you look at the business side of it, which is the customer, understanding your customer, your industry, looking outside of the industry, but then also starting to look at, hey, how do I actually build something that people are going to engage with over and over again, right? There's actually, there is a show on Netflix or a documentary on Netflix, I think it's called Social Dilemma, but it talks about, if you guys haven't seen it, I think it would be good, but it talks about how there's a psychological part of how these big tech companies build all these apps and how they get you to engage, right? So they're not just solving business and technology problems, but they're looking at the psychological aspect of it as well. Anyway, are there any other questions from the audience?
Not at this time.
Moderator, okay. So one thing that I maybe want my parents maybe talk a little bit about is, we all have, looking at digital transformation, right? There are a few maybe examples or companies that you've come across that you see are doing this well, right? Maybe you guys can share one or two examples of companies that your organizations aspire to be, or you're looking to pick up things or learnings from them that they're doing that you want to instill in your organizations. Do you have a couple of examples you can share?
I think for us, Dell is a big place, 158,000 plus employees, but I say we deal a lot with partners. And I've just been impressed by logistics. There's none of us, during the pandemic and we didn't go anyplace. I'm sure that many of us ordered online, Amazon deliveries may have come to your home every day. But the reality is that logistics really proved to be a challenge. When you got boats stuck in canals and you can't get products out. And so I will say for us, some of the partners, logistic partners, who really have been able to figure out how to use digital or how to really navigate logistical issues and challenges. And so from a global landscape, we have partners, big ones in Singapore and in Europe, and we just to see how they've navigated it all has been very interesting. So I think the thing about that community I talked about is when you're in the tech community, you're constantly in contact. We're all one little bubble, right? We all order the same chips. We all do all of this. So, we all know each other. So a lot of times we're all getting together, and it's amazing. The same business challenge you're trying to solve for, your counterpart at the company down the street is also trying to solve for. So I can say for me, we kind of have a network of, everything from small startups to your big businesses like us. And we kind of all get together and chat. So I think I'm just impressed by everyone having to deal with some of the problems and how we've all tried to approach it based on the culture of our company. Because everyone has a different cultural, aspect to their company.
Yeah.
I think if I had to look at a different industry and think about who I might be most impressed by, it's actually the sports analytics world. It's pretty amazing to me how data is collected so significantly these days in any major professional sport, right? Basketball, football, you name it. I mean, cameras are everywhere, sensors are everywhere, microphones and speakers are everywhere. And the collection of that massive amount of data, and then the analysis that goes into it that reveals insights and actually radically transforms the performance of a team is pretty impressive. I mean, we've all read Moneyball or watched the movie Moneyball, et cetera. That's just one example, but every single team out there is doing some major sports analytics. Mark Cuban actually tweeted one time, I gotta go find this tweet, but he tweeted one time a picture of a Python, an O'Reilly book on how to learn Python, and a screen, his laptop had a Jupyter notebook with some code listed in it. And Mark Cuban's, the tweet was, "Welcome to the new NBA." So, and the replies were all like, "Mark, what are you doing? Why do you need to learn that level of depth?" And his point was, look, I've got teams that do the analytics for me, but I have to understand what they do so that I can influence their strategy. And so that level of radical transformation of sports performance through the enablement of collection of streams of data and major analytics, and then influencing the design of teams, we all need to become a Mark Cuban.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, definitely. I think the sports industry, for a number of years, right? They do all of these things, but you never really see it out right in the open. Right now, it's become very prevalent. You have, I'm a big tennis fan, and I see Hawkeye, and then you have IBM Insights. They tell you, I'm sure these athletes are actually using this data because they tell you, hey, on break point, this guy serves to the middle of the court, right? So to me, I think that has been a great example. For me personally, I think the organizations that have, they've traditionally been, I'll call it, either service companies, and they figured out how to like you described, they figured out how to take data from products and services that they provide and then offer it as a different revenue stream, right? So Michelin is a good example of this. Michelin, not only are they now a tire company, right? They're a services company. They sell you tires, but what they do have is they have sensors, right, on the tires, right? And as an organization or a business, they can tell you, hey, in the fleet of vehicles that you have that have these tires on it, in about, another 100 miles, right, you should be servicing, right, your vehicle, right? So to me now, they have this wealth of data that they've turned into data products that they're providing either services back, right, to their consumers, or probably using it to further innovation, right, in their area. So to me, I think those type of companies, they figured out how to way to, take an existing product that they have and then define or come up with a new service model or a new revenue model, or even a new business model to generate revenue. So to me, those are things that are very, very much, I would say, inspiring for me. One final question that I have for my panelists. Let's say, 2-3 years from now, I know the journey is continuing, right? It's an ongoing, I call it, transformation. But if you were to describe or envision what your organization would be in the next, I'll say 2 to 3 years, and basically what you enable to achieve in terms of this digital era, what would you describe that vision as?
Ramesh, you want to go first?
Thanks, Alonda. I think that the vision here is that we're going to be a data company. We're a pharmaceutical company, but really we should become a data company. We're an analytics company that uses our expertise in data and analytics to do better at the pharmaceutical business. And that's really what we are all trying to strive for, is to become a data company within each of our industry verticals. And the day we start calling ourselves that and articulate that, and then believe it down within our DNA that we're a data and analytics company that happens to be in the pharmaceutical business, that's the vision that we're trying to get to.
Interesting, I like that.
It's kind of similar. It sounds like, we all of our companies started with one product, and we've all evolved. When people think about Dell, many people go straight to the hardware, right? A piece of physical equipment, a supply chain. And we definitely are so much more than that. And you have to be so more of services. But I will say at a corporate level, what I think over the next couple of years and what's already starting is it's the human progress piece that Michael Dell is committed to, that I think you're going to start to see more of is, how do we continue to help our communities flourish and grow? And that's just something that, we're going to continue to be a great hardware provider and a services provider. But when I think about the next 2 to 3 years, it's also about that human progress and the commitment that we've made to really help other people grow and thrive. That's what I think with the digital transformation, more than anything, I think that's where you're going to see us helping others achieve their goals. I think that's what I really am excited about, because we've proven, like I said, when you've done this for 20, 30 years and your revenue shows that you have a product that works, that's great. But I think all of us over the past 18 months have some soul searching that we've done. And, for all the young people who will one day be senior in their industries, you get to a point in your career, in your life, where it's more than just the financial reward. It is also the impact and legacy that you're leaving others. And so that is how I think in the next 2 to 3 years, what you're going to see from us is more of that. What's the legacy that we're creating and leaving behind for others?
I like that. Any questions from the audience? Or we can open it up for questions. Jason, how much time do you have left? We can open it up for questions.
We have about 7 minutes left.
While we wait for questions, one of the things, Aubrey, that you had mentioned was when we talk about data, the Olympics just finished. And so most people know, if you go back to looking at Olympics in the past, we look at the gymnastics or the diving, we see all the scores. And what people may not realize now, all the technology that is running behind the scenes, the multiple servers and all of that is happening in the transformation of the Olympics is one that I said has been really interesting to see and to be a part of. How quickly you see scores. To make that happen, there is a lot of data that is being, transferred. And so I think that's a really good example of look at the Olympics in the past and look at now how they're leveraging technology. And even this year, when you talk about sports, Ramesh, I think that's interesting. Look how the sports world had to pivot on how do you make an Olympic event exciting without fans and without your typical, hoopla that happens. And so everybody has had to really make some kind of drastic change. But I definitely think from the data aspect, the Olympics is one that it's really a transformation when you look at it.
Yeah, no, totally right. I mean, when you consider they have to move to the major audience is on TV now, right?
Yeah.
Or streaming or whatever, digital. And so how do you make that two-dimensional view of the Olympics phenomenal in its experience, a fabulous experience in 2D instead of being in person and enjoying it live? But you know, just watching the swimmers go back and forth in the pool, but seeing where the world record line was as they were going, how much modeling had to happen, how much mapping into the camera angle to make it live on the pool. I mean, that's phenomenal analytics that had to go behind it. And you're right, some serious edge computing to dial that in for the live audience. So I think the Olympics was a fantastic digital journey. I hope many digital case studies or the case studies about the digitization of the Olympics will come out of Tokyo.
Yeah, and I think even like today it's almost expected, right? From a consumer standpoint, like it's not just about just watching it on TV, but I think as you're even watching it on TV, you have your device and you're looking up different things, right, about the competition, right? So it's almost that experience is expected, right? Another example was I think the U.S. Open golf tournament, which I didn't even know, but they have the app, and then in the app you can actually follow the players that you want, and you can look at in the 3D form every shot that they hit, right? So like, and it's real time, right? So every shot that they hit, you can see where the ball landed, what club they used. And it's, so you can imagine, again, the computing power, the data that and then all of putting that all in an experiential view that makes it engaging. It's phenomenal.
All right, Aubrey, we have one question from
Yep.
Mr. Ray Gonzalez. It looks like it's directed at Orlando. And he said that, Orlando, your comments around legacy and impact seem to reflect the empathetic approach to business that Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, describes in his book, Hit Refresh. If this is an industry-wide shift to look beyond solely profit as a measure of success, what's the catalyst? Is this about last year's summer of racial reckoning, or is it something else at work here?
Yeah, that's a great question. People always want to know why now, right? For Dell, this didn't just start a year ago. Of course, there's been additional things we've had to address. We actually have had what we call them 2030 goals set over 4 to 5 years ago when Michael really said, this is what I want to achieve in our communities, but more importantly, this is what I want to achieve in our company. So they did not start as a result of the US and last year. Now, as a result of that, you cannot, as a company, not address what your team members are living and going through. So we have had to address those through listening sessions and really figure out and look at ourselves, right? We all have an area of opportunity and we all have blind spots. And so, yes, we, like every other company, had to address the situation. But I would say from a global lens, there's a lot of things that are happening, not just in the US, that we also had to look at. So the legacy is not just about an event causing you to change, because that's never sustainable. When you just try to shift and change based on today, that doesn't happen. You have to have a mission, as Ramesh talked about. So what is your mission? What is your purpose? What is your passion? What are you trying to achieve? And there may be additional things that occur that make you, change here or there. But our mission has always been, how do we use technology to enable others to grow and thrive? And that is what our legacy is.
I think that many industries are trying to understand what our global mission is to the world, to society, to humanity, et cetera. You even see it in the Olympics ads that Lilly put out, where we start talking about ourselves as Lilly is a medicine company, but the ad was focused a lot about healthcare for all, because we understand that the overall health, the health of the world is what matters. And we're just contributing one angle to it. We're trying to make a business and be sustainable in it, but we care a lot about more than just this. And frankly, I think the events of the last 18 months, 2 years, those are ones that catapulted us to accelerate the ideas and the plans and the interests that we had. We've always had these interests to become more mission focused, more noble in our goals. The urgency is just what had changed, not the choice. We've always wanted to make this happen. The urgency is what changed it. I think we have to become a little bit more proactive in what we do to make sure that the world is healthy and comfortable enough in a place where making a profit feels good. You don't want to make a profit where it doesn't feel good because the world is suffering at the, their expense is your profit. That's not what we want. Nobody wants that. So we're here to do well as long as the world is doing well. That's clear for everybody.
Great. Yeah.
That's something for the young people too. I will say, when you look at the global aspect, I would say learn as much as you can about the cultural aspect, because sometimes when you use the word D&I and all these things, every country, every culture has its own definition of what diversity and inclusion looks like and what it means. So if you are young or you're just starting out, or you've been in the industry for a while, but you've been primarily, regional, maybe US based, the opportunity for your career to understand more about other cultures, that really gives you a different differentiator as well, right? That is a unique differentiator. And it makes you literally just look at things from a very different lens. Because the issues that were happening in the US last summer, being in Malaysia, people couldn't understand it. So they're asking a lot of questions because it just doesn't happen where I'm at. So being able to understand culturally where your customers are coming from, where people that work with you, their backgrounds are coming from. It's more than just the region that you live in or that you support. I think as a young person, that is really impactful for your future.
Yeah, spot on. And, I almost say, that, you almost want to seek, that you want to almost kind of seek it, right? You want to go and, look outside your industry, look outside your, your bubble, right? You want to go after those things, right? And I think as you start to learn from other people, the way they work, think, that diversity of thought, I think that's going to open, right, a lot of viewpoints for you. And that's all things that will help you kind of, think about the word differently, think about, it's not just about, like I said, business tech, it's about, we're all trying to solve human problems, right? And the more viewpoints you see, right, it's going to help you connect the dots easier. So I think we're a little bit over time. Panelists, thank you very much for your experiences, thoughts, and sharing your knowledge based on our conversation. Thank you again, Mr. Moderator, over to you.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you everyone for joining. What I'd like to do, all the attendees, if you enjoyed today's session, please let the panelists know by just dropping any comments in the chat. And I want to thank you all for joining. We certainly heard some great things from this digital transformation and innovation fireside chat panel. Some of my personal takeaways were learning about massive upskilling and living by your mission, constantly learning, automation by eliminating tasks that no one's ever wants to do again, and pivoting as a leader, keeping your curiosity and creativity, creating legacies, innovation of multiple industries with analytics and data, and just I know everyone touched on sports a little bit and the Olympics. I just want to kind of throw out, like, I really enjoyed watching the NFL playoffs last year with my kids on Nickelodeon, and just how all that is tied into the innovation and the creativity of how we are transforming the technology. But thank you again, Orlando, Ramosh, and Aubrey, on behalf of BDPA. This was an awesome talk. I learned a lot and enjoyed it. Thank you everyone that's in attendance for joining. And up next on our agenda is our C-Suite panel, which is starting in exactly 2 minutes. So thanks everyone, and enjoy the remainder of the conference. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Everyone.
Bye.